the science of cannabis extraction, right? It's a science. You don't just wash your hash or get some tubes and a can of butane and try not to blow yourself up in the backyard. There's a better way to do it. It's way more technical. And to lead us in this, German YouTube cannabis activist and pioneer and legendary, I don't even know how you say legendary cannabis user in German, but I'm sure there's a word for it. Let's hear it for Michael Knotz.
Hi.
Hi.
I hope it was fun.
Yeah, I think I have pictures. It's okay. That's right.
So, welcome everybody to our panel of the science about the science of cannabis extraction. And I'm very glad, I'm very proud to present you 5 experts in cannabis extraction from different companies, from different continents. And let me start to introduce, I will introduce anybody by when he answers his first question, so you don't have to wait so long for our expertise. So my first question, my introduction is to Mr. Nick and Brusianos. Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm not so
Yes,
good
it's
at
right.
pronouncing. You're in the cannabis business or in the extraction business quite long. In 2019, you founded Cannabis, which is a quite successful B2B distributor. And as we all know, we're talking about, on the ICBC, we're always talking about 2 different markets. We're talking about the European market, and we're talking about the US and the Canadian market, the overseas market, how we call it. When it comes to cannabis extraction, what would you say? What are the basic differences? Because you are experienced on both sides of the Atlantic, so what would you say? Which is what are the basic differences between our 2 markets, or the 2 markets?
Regulation is more strict in Europe. Taking care of safety factors of the extraction methods are much stricter. Also documentation, and the key word here is also EU GMP. There are factors that they are not so strong in the US, although in the US and Canada, although of course they take good care of safety, but at a different level that we would like to do it here in the EU.
Yeah, thank you very much. And this is my next question, goes to the next expert who is also experienced on both continents, Rui Soares. You're working for, you're CEO of Paralab, which is located in Portugal. And what would you say? What are your experiences? You're mostly, because Portugal is part of the EU, and Portugal only medical cannabis is legal, recreational is still illegal. So what are your experience with especially European regulation?
Well, the European regulation actually, I think, comes for good. Because talking about the United States, and if we look, say, for reports from Bright Labs, I think from 2021, 30% of extracts had high contaminations of pesticides. And so these are the ones that are actually measured. So the people that send samples to be analyzed, that is, I think, a small minority. So if we want to have a safe cannabis usage, doesn't matter if it's medical or if it's recreational in Europe, so that people can consume knowing that they are taking a safe product, regulation is absolutely necessary. That's the way to go. I'm all in terms of the regulation. It's the only way to go.
So when it comes to regulation, we also have to talk about extraction technique, because the better the technique, the purer the product is, George. George Stanchev, or Dr. George Stanchev, is that right?
Correct.
We met this morning, and he's in the German, in the U.S. and also in the European extraction industry, and he introduced me a technique I've never heard of, and I'm really I'm not too deep, but at least I wrote a book about cannabis extraction, which is available here also, and in German language. And I was really surprised about the way you do your extraction. So what's different? The way you do your extraction from the standard extraction?
When we talk extraction, we always have to honor Europe as where the extraction is originated. So Claudius Galenicus in the 100 years AD started extracting with ethanol and water. And he documented that for over 150 different herbs. And it's really, to our days, Europe has been operating based on strict regulations. And everything that we do into the extraction space, we try to make and improve this extraction. They've been after the simple methods of extraction. Liquefied gas extraction was added, which is very quick and clean extraction, which improves the purity of the extract regulated by pharma. So what I've developed is the next generation of liquefied gas extraction that combines the advantages of all current extractions, the ethanol, the butane, hydrocarbons, the CO2, and it's something that delivers a full power of the plant into ambient conditions, preserving the pH and the medicinal values. So that's, in purified extraction, we've been working that in the last 10 years. In the cannabis industry, in the last 20 years into the fragrance and flavor industry, improving that extraction methods.
Thank you very much, George. Jonah Barber, we know quite a long time already. He comes from the consumer side of cannabis, may I say so? You used to be consumer before before you went into the business, or
well, they say do what you love, and so I did find a lot of early benefits from that side. And that's what also drove me to get into the industry, was my passion, just believing in the therapeutic and benefits of the plant.
And so you built up MRX Labs in 2013 already, which means you're in the lab business and in the extraction business. You know extraction, you know the products for a long time. What would you say the difference between European extraction, which you're not, or what is most advanced? What does the consumer search in the overseas market at the moment, and what does the consumer search here on the European market? What would you say?
Yeah, I think the way I would look at it is I see Europe where probably like the US was maybe like 10 years ago is probably a pretty good comparison to where when we started on the analytical lab side, which was really interesting because being at an analytical lab, you're at the forefront of products. You see everything that's coming into the lab, what's moving, what's popular. And I remember back in 2012 when we started the lab, all we saw was flower. And then overnight, we just started seeing extracts just flood into the lab. And actually, it was very poor extracts, to be honest with you. I so badly wanted to like them, but I hated it. It tasted like burnt popcorn, and just they're adding propylene glycol. Just there was heavy solvent still left in it. It was actually very scary because there was no solvent testing required at the time. And so you were seeing, so people were doing QC testing, but they're still putting those products out in the market for medicinal reasons. And it was just very scary. So actually what led us into getting into the extraction side was based off test results. And that's where we started MRX, which is now Decimal, which does extraction equipment. But to answer your question, so from that side, it was very heavily flower in the beginning. And then it very quickly kind of evolved into extraction, which was a combination of vape pens, edibles, topicals, creams. And so I think we'll see that here shortly. I think in Europe, I think what people will see is it'll start slow, but then it ramps up really, really quick from that side. And so like just some of the advice I would give people that are starting out is to plan for rapid expansion quickly. So you're not trying to play catch up or change a lot of your infrastructure or things like that as well. Plan for that now. And also, I'd say be versatile from that side. It's going to be very important to be versatile to the market, especially when it gets to a recreational side, when it ultimately gets there. Because the market can be very finicky and also change very quickly. Like what might be popular one year might be something completely different the next year. And if you're in a position to essentially be able to adapt quickly, you'll be able to grab bigger market share a lot faster as well. And so I think you'll just really see the products, as it evolves, really expand quite quickly.
Thank you, Jonah. Steve, you also long experience in the US cannabis industry for 12 years. Now you're working for Sci-Fi, or you founded Sci-Fi. You're more from the East Coast.
Yes, correct.
As a German cannabis activist, I always looked on the West Coast. But is there anything different on the East Coast? Do you use different techniques over there, or is there a different cannabis extraction culture? Because because cannabis in New York is legal now, I've heard, and so is there any difference or a local difference in extraction techniques?
It's funny you say that. I'm a CEO of Manzana Extracts in New York State, and we're starting an operation there. And I see New York in a very similar phase or stage to where Europe is right now. And it seems like most countries go through these stages of early adoption and then ramping up efficiency. And to Jonah's point, I think the biggest thing, one of the biggest things I see here that's very different both in New York and here versus the West Coast is scale. We see people trying to process 1 or 2 pounds at a time in the small scales, which is easy to do with rosin presses and that type of thing. But eventually, when prices drop, and they will, you're going to need to scale up so efficiencies of scale take place. And that's where the larger ethanol, larger CO2, larger hydrocarbon machines become more potent. The other thing that we're very focused on are terpenes, not just the extraction of them, but the separation of them. And so I think as this market evolves, there'll be a big need for extra terpene production, and a lot of that will come from hemp.
The rumor, just next question, the rumor in Germany is terpenes extracted from hemp are too expensive. Would you agree?
Well, I would say that terpenes are too expensive to begin with because they're ephemeral. They're difficult to capture in their entirety. They're difficult to store in their entirety and keep them unaltered. And most extraction methods, and I hope I won't offend anybody on the panel by saying this, but very often techniques like ethanol extraction can destroy those valuable terpenes. CO2 has the capacity to capture them at a subcritical level, but most of us in the industry who extract would agree that propanes and butanes tend to be the best at capturing the full spectrum of terpenes. And the last thing I'll add to that is that there are new technologies coming in play right now through membranes that allow you to separate those terpenes from the cannabinoids. And ultimately where this market ends up, if you're really speaking about medical cannabis, is to get pure constituents, pure THC, pure CBD, and generally that involves some form of crystallization. So when we take those terpenes out, we can then move towards that crystallization and then reconstitute, or as pharmacists call it, recompound to precise doses, and then we can really start to talk about medical products.
Okay. Let me speak out the theory. The lower the boiling point of the solvent is, the better the product is. Anybody who wants can answer? George, you looked at me first.
Absolutely, I agree with that, because boiling point, now the most popular methods are separating components by boiling points. And when you have, let's say, I don't know, at 80 and your first terpene evaporating at 100, then you don't really have a margin to separate. You're going to end up with a lot of residual solvent. That's why going subcritical on CO2 or using aerosol R134 or using butane where the boiling point is close to zero, and you have a full 100 degree of separation, we can really preserve those terpenes. It's very important also not to destruct and destroy these terpenes, because some of the methods during heat and oxygen, it oxidize the terps, and you lose monoterps very often because they're the smallest molecule. And the science of terps, actually, if it is known by the science that currently the terps, they enhance the cannabinoids. 50%, like if they go into the body, they activate the receptor 50% before the cannabinoid connects to the receptor. This is a recent study from Russo a few months ago, and that proves that preserving the full terpene profile of a plant as it appears in the strain is going to increase bioavailability of the same plant. Not looking for like water soluble or anything else. The plant by itself provides you the option for better medical treatment. So preserving the terpenes in the full profile is very important for the medicinal values of the plant by itself.
Just to add to that, and I'll start by saying there's no one perfect extraction method or one extraction method that's better than another. It all depends on what someone wants to make. But when we're talking about terpene preservation and things like that, I think what's really unique and exciting to be able to introduce to Europe that's been doing in the US is, from a hydrocarbon extraction standpoint, is being able to run fresh frozen and run it and that to get like the highest terpene content in doing that. And so that's some groups here we're talking about too, which also changes the cultivation side, because no one's been looking at doing that over here as well too, to how to properly, store fresh frozen, get ready for the extractors, because there hasn't been an opportunity yet. But in my opinion, that's one of the best ways to get the highest terpene profile.
I fully agree, but there are a new kid in block. That is still CO2, but CO2 under pressure and in cryogenic temperatures between 0 and -20. Here you can also work with freshly frozen flowers. You can even tune if you use small amounts of co-solvent like ethanol and other class 2 solvents that are allowed for medical and pharmaceutical applications. Here you can tune even for the type of terpenes, so mono, D, or triterpenes, and save them with efficiencies of over 90%, with the advantage to other butane or so on, because when you are using butane, you always keep these gases at surface. Then you have to go to vacuum applications of vacuum treatment in vacuum ovens to degas to take the other carbon out. But terpenes are also volatile, so you are also losing in these processed terpenes. If you are extracting using this CO2, cryo CO2 method of once you bring to ambient temperature, is gone. So at the end, the efficiencies in terms of capturing terpenes is higher, and you also can tune this. At the same time, this same technique can extract with efficiencies over 90% the cannabinoids. And once again, by tuning the polarity of our solvent, that is mixed between the liquid CO2 and the ethanol or other class 2 solvents, you are very selective to what you are aiming to extract. It can be THC, it can be CBD, or it can be a flavonoid. And the best proof and fantastic thing about this new technology is that it doesn't matter if you are extracting from really bad starting material like shredded biomass from hemp, flowers and leaves together with 2-3%, or if you have hemp with 5-6%, or if you have a 10% flower or a 15 potency flower, 20 or 25, your extracts will be always over 80%. Why? Because you are simply extracting what you want, cannabinoids, leaving most of the other unwanted components behind. This is really revolutionary. I'm working on extraction for 35 years in CO2, typically supercritical applications. This technique can run in a supercritical typical system, but modified to have in these conditions, and this is unique. Usually in supercritical extraction, you don't get quality and speed. If you want high quality, so a very pure extract, you have to go slow, low pressures, low temperatures. Otherwise, you'll not get quality high purity. With this technique, for the same extractor vessel, you are increasing 3 to 5 times the throughput, but keeping an extremely, it's not high, it's extremely high quality extract. This is really groundbreaking, I think. For me, that works on CO2 extractions for over 35 years is the very big step forward I've seen over these 35 years, because CO2 in these years didn't change much. So this was a big improvement that I highly recommend it.
So when it comes to CO2 extraction, you need a lot of equipment. Let me say it easily, or in the easy way. So in Germany, we'll have cannabis clubs very soon. They're allowed to do extractions, but they're not allowed to solvent extractions. Even water hash, though water is not a solvent, is considered a solvent extraction. What would you recommend them, Nick? The German cannabis clubs, probably some are sitting here and listening.
Yeah, with regards to water extraction, if it's...
What would you recommend? If you have a cannabis club, you produce cannabis for 500 people,
Yeah.
And you want to make extraction, but you're not allowed to do solvent extraction, and you're not allowed to do water hash. What would you recommend a German club?
You cannot do solvent and you cannot do water extraction.
Exactly.
So I guess you can press it.
We can press it here, we can make,
Sift it first.
Sift it
anything
and
which
press
is mechanical.
Yeah, in a way, water extraction is mechanical extraction in a way.
Exactly, but because we don't have experts who are in response of the law, they consider water extraction as a solvent extraction. And
Yeah.
we try, some people from the cannabis industry try to explain, try to lobby that water hash is not a solvent extraction, it's non-solvent, but they don't understand.
It's
the
considered
technique.
mechanical separation in a way. It's like
I know, yeah, but they don't understand
taking
the
a tree
technique.
for the apples to
Solvent
fall.
is not. It's also because it's dangerous. It's not allowed on private level because it's dangerous. For example, in Colorado, and they just didn't understand that. That's because only a lot of lawyers made it, but there were not too many cannabis experts when it came to the law. So that's the problem.
So I guess there are not many options left. CO2, I guess it's out of the picture as well.
Yes.
So what are we left with? It's GIF.
Vapor static.
Yeah.
So imagine
That could be also.
So you have to extract for 500 people every month, and
vapor,
actually you
vapor
can make
static
rosin.
could be a solution. I guess it's a way of extracting with no solvents, with using heat and evaporating the oils out of the plants, and then collecting them again. I guess that could be, but then again you need very big systems. For the small size of the social clubs, it becomes very narrow, the options. If you're talking about small amounts with small systems, I guess making kiff and pressing it should be a way that is mechanical purely, and it can work for sure.
But on a level, anybody else can answer, please. On a level where you make it for 500 people, would you agree to say that's not economical at all if you cannot do solvent extraction?
I agree to that because when you use sifting, you only rely on the trichomes, and there is much more potency inside of the plant. You use probably 30% of the entire cannabinoids into the plant, and any mechanical extraction is non-selective. So your quality of the extract, it kind of may vary a lot. And I completely understand their decision of trying to put the water into the solvent, because once they say water is legal, then or good for like solventless, immediately two other methods are going to get in. That's the steam extraction, steam distillation, and superheated water extraction. And superheated water extraction is a special type of extraction which also we produce that can make water to behave as an ethanol. And you really can get a very good extract out of that too. So maybe they have this concern when they try to classify harsh bubble extraction, but still sifting and pressing, or pressing even without sifting, but then you're going to end up with some chlorophylls and some other things that you don't really know, that you don't really want into, they will influence the taste.
Very interesting, because water steam extraction I wrote my book 4 years ago, and I announced in the last chapter that steam extraction is the future, but there was no steam extraction at that time. What do you say about steam extraction? Because this is very, very interesting in my eyes, because it's under hot steam, under pressure, and there are no solvents at all, it's just water. So did you hear about it? What do you say about steam extraction?
Steam extraction, I know applications only for terpenes. And if we don't care for how the flower stays after, and if terpenes is the only main compound we want to extract, steam distillation is absolutely the best technique. The efficiencies for terpenes is high. I was surprised when I heard saying that it's expensive to extract terpenes from hemp, because steam distillation is a quite low-cost extraction technique, and it's extremely efficient. We tried this with hemp, and the results were fantastic. And I was comparing with with all techniques discussed today here, without any exception, and steam distillation for terpenes got the best results, period, by far. The efficiencies were huge. But there is one new kid on the block also there, not commercially available, still in development, but coming soon, that may resolve the German problem, microwave extraction. So it's already used now for terpenes, but is commercially available, patented by an Italian company, but with very good results, expensive equipment, but is coming now a solution for cannabinoids extraction, also based on microwave.
Can you maybe explain to me and to the audience in a few words how microwave extraction works?
Well, microwave is just a wave, type of wave in a certain spectrum zone of the radio frequency spectrum. That, as you all know, we have microwave ovens at home that has capacity to warm any material we put inside the oven. The point is that if you tune for certain frequencies, microwave, you are making vibrating, for instance, only the terpenes. This is how the terpenes are extracted, and being volatile, so by eating just the terpenes in the flower, they vaporize and then they are easily extracted. This is how it's working. Now, with cannabinoids, having been also volatile, having higher boiling points, that task is not so simple, but have been advanced on past years, and very soon there will be here equipment that will be able to extract cannabinoids using microwaves. They are not in market now because there has been an effort to make this equipment GMP compliant for pharmaceutical applications. Sincerely, I think it will be difficult to get at that level, but for recreational adult use, the technology at its present state, it's there. So it can be a next big thing.
Very interesting, because when I started growing wheat in 1996, you were always tempted maybe to put the wheat in the microwave after you harvested it. But there was a rule, never do that. A good grower does not put his wheat in the microwave. But I always learn. Jonah, did you hear about microwave extraction, or is that a topic in the US?
It's not, no. I know using microwaves for other things when it comes to processing and things like that and drying, but no, not for extraction.
It's an American technology. It's an American company.
There are some technologies of the microwave, but they also destruct very, very badly some long chain molecules. So it needs to be perfected for cannabinoids. I completely agree with you.
Well, I want to point up front, which is that water is the quintessential universal solvent. So it is absolutely a solvent in that way. To address the issue earlier, I think that a club could take dry ice, if it was practical, and tumble it and get much more efficacy and potency in tumbling and then press that keef. Yeah. But to the point of microwave, I believe, it's my understanding that in Canada, it's being used with some success in a CGMP environment.
But for drying.
I'm sorry?
For drying. Not for extraction yet.
So there are a couple companies now that are offering an extraction phase for that.
Okay.
Yeah, and
that's
a
news.
terpene and a cannabinoid extraction.
I knew about the American.
I'm sorry?
I knew about the Americans, not the Canadians.
Yeah, the Canadians.
Good news.
There's also another thing called hollow core technology extraction. But, ultimately, with all extraction methods, as Jonas pointed out, there's a yin and a yang to all of them. And the needle you have to thread is the fine line between CapEx and OpEx. And the one point that no one's brought up yet that's going to be critical, not now, but when the market matures, is the cost per kilogram. And that's where certain methods will start to win over others. I would never debate that CO2 doesn't have some fantastic qualities to it, but when those cost factors start to weigh in, sometimes other methods will prove less costly.
We did not talk about the most popular or the most spread extraction technique, which is alcohol. German pharmacies mostly extract with alcohol. Do the US, the advanced technology companies in the US, do they still use alcohol, or is that, so to speak, something you did 10 years ago?
We do. The problem is alcohol is almost too effective. It grabs so much, and so your downstream post-purification needs to be even more robust.
And so I'd agree with Steve on that, where we see a lot of ethanol use is primarily built for like people that want to go to bulk distillate or isolations, and is usually when we sell ethanol systems from a volume standpoint. If you're more focused on very high terpene profile types, if you're typically going to use a different, such as hydrocarbon or CO2.
Okay, thank you. And does anybody or any one of the gentlemen see future in THC steam distillation under pressure? Do you think that this will be like the future of extraction, or this will never work?
Steam distillation probably not going to work for that. It's too of a large molecule for evaporation. It needs different parameters, like to push into different temperatures in order to get it out. That's why we develop a special method, which is some people call it supercritical, but it's really superheated water. So it's also under pressure with airless environment, and when the water is put in that environment, it behaves like you can tune it really like 80% alcohol or 90% alcohol or 20% alcohol. So it really works into the full range of CO2 as well.
Okay, thank you, George. Steve?
The one challenge I would say, it was brought up earlier, is there's more than one product that's being made in a concentrate. And the question is, what's the end product? Are you going to an edible? Are you going to a vape cart? Are you going to something that might be dabbable? And there are very few solvents that can span all of those product categories. That really is the linchpin of it all, is being able to make all products at a low cost.
Thank you very much. And I think we are quite late, but I think there are one or two questions are possible if there are any questions from the audience.
Are there questions from the audience? Did you all run out of ideas?
No, there's one question from the audience.
Two questions.
I hope so. I hope some cannabis clubs want to extract soon. We're not so experienced.
It's good to have
in Germany.
questions. Here we go. Let's hear it for the panel, by the way.
Thanks. I hope I don't butcher this. You mentioned hollow tube extraction.
Hollow core.
Oh, could you say something about that?
So it came from the Bakken oil fields. It was a way to separate the oil from the sand. And it's proved to be expensive, but again, you're threading the needle of cost. And it is extremely expensive on the CapEx side, buying it up front. And that's been the biggest barrier to that particular technology.
How does it work?
We would need another 15 minutes, and I'd need a board to draw on to explain it. But it's essentially almost a microfiltration technology. I'll put it in that way.
So my question would be, so the most efficient way for those cannabis clubs in Germany would be this truck and ice tumbling and pressing. This would be the best idea? Everybody knocking heads, like, yeah?
Best way
It can be an easy and fast way to do it. If especially you have all these limitations, and until these limitations are gone, I guess it can be a good way to do it.
They only consider the hash product as a byproduct of extraction. Every way to make hash, either by direct press or through sifting or through ultrasound even, it's going to be sufficient. Now, of course, efficiency is not going to be there, but at least it's the first step. It's going to be like, this is the first rule. That rule going to evolve, it's going to be changed, and depends of how that everything going to start in the first few months. Maybe they're going to be, like all the clubs going to write proper response to the ruling, and that's going to be voted in September or in the fall with some changes. But for now, that's unfortunately is the only simple way to do it.
What I expect here, I must admit, Germany is quite good in engineering, and I think one club will invent or build a mega rosin press, like 5 meters by 5 meters, where they can put half of the harvest on, This is what I expect from the German clubs, yeah. Please build a mega rosin press, because that's, in my eyes, the only way to do it at a commercial level,
So I built a rosin press in Washington State that could press 2 kilos at a time.
Something like
I built
this,
it with Boeing engineers. Whether that's good or bad, I'm not sure. But
As long as the doors don't fall off of the press, you'll be okay.
But the one point I would like to make about all hashes and rosins is that if you were a gold miner and there was a quarter of an ounce of gold in your rock, you're only getting about half of it out. And the only way to get that other half out is to use some type of solvent. And when we pressed those rosins, we would take the bags, we pressed it, all the biomass, we'd even scrape the plates, and we'd rerun that in a BHO or an ethanol process to get the other half of the gold out.
Fantastic. Are there any closing statements or arguments you'd like to make?
No. Any more questions from the audience?
One question, especially now for the German social clubs, what do you think about, especially if you use dry sieve for pressing, to do a separation, electric separation before?
Sounds like an interesting experiment. Let me know how it works out for you. I mean, really, I have to say, this entire industry is one big R&D project, and none of us have all the answers here. So seriously, let us know how that works out.
So the electrical, like what they call in the moment the static sifting.
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
The technique they call in the moment the static sifting.
Static sifting.
Like a hydrostatic extraction? Yeah. That has benefits, but much like with steam distillation, which again is very, very effective, we find you lose what we call your high notes and your low notes in your terpenes, so you get more of a blended terpene. You're going to lose those sensations of a particular strain, and you may also do what we call isomerized chemicals. We actually in Washington State invented a chemical called it was CBD-T, I believe was the chemical, and it was caused by too much heat. You're changing the chemicals whenever you're using heat, and that's the challenge.
Okay, thank you for your expertise, and especially for the German clubs who are listen very well, because when it comes to extraction, we have to learn a lot from all the guys from overseas and from Portugal, of course. Thank you very much.
Let's hear it again, Michael Canode and the rest of the panelists.